find out that I made all of that up. It's true. What I like to do for a couple of reasons. One is that usually I hold the high ground. I'm very nervous here. I have no Kevlar. So we'll do this as a seminar style rather than a straight lecture. So if you have questions, observations, feel free to do that. A couple of people I want to recognize in the audience. Dr. Irving said that I was on a team. My teammate who enabled the FBI to have a presence on the internet in 1993 was Randy Robinson, who's sitting here. Randy was then at NASA. When I annoyed my manager the other time, and finally said, "Sure, go ahead." After I explained to him what the internet was, and he said, "Go ahead and do that." And I called headquarters and they said, "We don't have a server you can use. We're thinking about it." And I knew what that meant, so I called Randy. He said, "Sure, we can do that." And within 2 days, the first set of information about Unabomber's checkered history were online, and Randy set me up with an email. I was responding to information that was coming via that road. So who knows when it might have happened subsequently later, but it happened in 1993 because Randy Robinson made it happen for me. The other person is at the back of the room is my mentor, Becky Bass, whose most recent book on intrusion detection was published by Macmillan Press. Wave at him, Becky. When they heard that I was coming to guest lecture, they asked if they could attend, and I asked Dr. Irving, and she said, "You always come with the charity section." I always put together a charity section. First of all, how many of you are engineers? How many of you are computer scientists? How many think there's no distinction? How many naval officers? Marines? Semper Fi. I served with, I know I don't look it now, I'm carrying some extra luggage. I served with 1st Force Recon in Vietnam. As a Navy hospital program. The Marines took very good care of me. One of the things that probably is the most important to me, and which I hope to infect you with at least a little bit of, that is that the problems that confront us all, whether in the military, private sector. I work for Computer Sciences Corporation, big company. They have Cornell, Segundo, and they have worldwide operations. I work for them in the Falls Church, Virginia office. Private sector, public sector, the problems that we confront are, in my opinion, not technological. The problems are ability to imagine ways to use technology. And we don't always do that. Some of that comes from natural conditioning, natural experiential base that we all go through. We tend to do things the way we've always done them. Now, as engineers and computer scientists, you know that if you don't follow the script, things aren't going to work. So both your natural tendency and your training is to follow the script, not to diverge from it too often. Well, my intention is that that's fine when we're making the technology do what we want it to do. But in terms of decision making, we need to do things, make the management to use technology and not just continue to follow the path. Now, I think that there there is some not only precedent, but a demonstration of evidence that that's important. Back in the 70s, there was established an Office of Technology Assessment, whose role was to advise the Congress about what the impact of technology was going to be as it evolved. For whatever reasons, it fell out of favor. Those of you who are interested can read the historical accounts of OTA and its demise and what it meant. But I think that it's an important capacity for you as leaders in the military, as leaders in whatever sector, in whatever path you walk, to be able to look at the technology and find different ways to make use of it. If we look at things one-dimensionally, you're always going to look at things one-dimensionally. You need to look at that in a different way. If you look at things like this, it's always going to appear the same. You have to look at it this way, and this way, and this way in order to see the differences in the potential applications for that technology. Otherwise, you keep doing things the same way you've always done them. So what I'd like to chat with you about is ways in which to... Come on. I lost the signal. There we go. Yeah, it was sitting too long. I got it. Very, very good. Thank you.
I've been doing the same thing like that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to walk up on it and intimidate it so that it'll perform. Children don't want to perform when they want them to. The question is, with respect to threats to national security and to cybercrime, the kind of crimes that make use of technology, that's what I'll operationally define cybercrime. Are we going to see more of the same? Is it going to be the same as it was? Or are we going to see new and different variations? And from my point of view, the issue is what the leadership of organizations do with that notion. In 1980, I started my assignment at the FBI Academy in 1980, and I immediately, as new guy on the block, offered a number of unsolicited suggestions for improvement, which were very well received. I was 6'4" when I joined the FBI. It takes its toll. Sometimes the messenger, easier to kill the messenger. And the fellow who, when I said we need to introduce computers are the way of the future, let's introduce some forces here. He said computers are a fad. Tom Watson was correct. There'll never be a need for more than 4 computers in the entire world. He was of that mind. And in 1991, when I left the academy to go to San Francisco, at my going away party, that same fellow was there, and he says, "Boy, you're still wrong. Computers are still a fad." It's sort of don't bother me with the facts. I've made up my mind. And some of the facts are that if our expectations are that we can only use this technology in this particular way, and that's the only way we'll ever proceed. We have to. I guess it's helpful if I can aim there. That's probably in the range too. Oh, the laser's working. Yeah, the down arrow. Now, the big question, thank you. The big question with respect to what the role of the military is, it falls into that same context, I think. And that is, what's the role of the military been? What is it now? And what direction are we going in the future? I think pre-9/11, the issue was pretty much moot. And in the wake of September the 11th, all of our assumptions have been challenged. And out of the tragedy of September the 11th, I think it's the good that will come from that is that maybe we won't be so cavalier about that which we believe can be done, could be done, and how many of you are familiar with that concept, posse comitatus? Posse comitatus is the legislation which says, the law that says that only under certain conditions can you use the military, and usually that's for riots and that sort of thing. But maybe there's some adjustments that have to be made in posse comitatus that enables, and in fact, there's been some tweaking of that. Anybody from the Coast Guard here? There's been some use in drug interdiction, the use of military at the behest of the Coast Guard and the Border Patrol in drug interdiction matters. So the military has already had a role, although quiet. And the question is, does it need to be in that format? Can it be changed? Should it be changed?
Bill, I'm wondering, is this really considered a civilian, strictly civilian infrastructure, and as such, subject to that?
Well, I think that's being debated now in committees both in the House and the Senate. They're asking that question. Does this restriction prohibit us given the context in which we're now exploring the issues? So I think that there's a lot that's going to happen there. The Patriot Act was passed not too long ago to try to take into account the manner in which we deal with the problems of people flying airplanes into our national icons. Any of you taken a look at that sucker? It's about the size of the San Francisco Yellow Pages. And one of the things that is concern to me is that there's only one page, and it isn't an entire page, that's devoted to the critical infrastructure. It talks about it, it's sort of like, goes real quick right past. It doesn't say too much about it. So I'm hopeful that the people that put that together and the people that advise on that will start to examine what the nature of our critical infrastructure is and how we protect it. Now, there have been a number of discussions that have taken place, including here on this campus, about what the critical infrastructure is as it's defined in Washington, how it relates to the militaries generally and the navies in particular, critical infrastructure. Are they mirror images? Are they different? How are they different? But clearly, if you've got a ship that is being built in Newport News, Virginia, is a shipyard, a naval vessel, the critical infrastructure aboard that ship may be different than what goes on in the civilian world of Newport News, Virginia. But if the infrastructure collapses, or any element of it collapses, that is tethered to that ship, then not much progress is going to be made. So it's insufficient for these naval officers to be concerned only about the boundaries of your ship, but where you're tethered to, both virtually and literally. And that is an issue which fascinates me, and I think needs further exploration. And I know that is being done here at the Computer Sciences Department now, consideration of those kinds of issues. Crank through the next couple of them. One more. The kinds of things that confront law enforcement today and the military, the investigative functions of the military, NIS, Air Force OSI, Army CID, all are contending with the same kinds of problems that are depicted there as exist in the civilian law enforcement community. One of the unfortunate things is that there is limited or no collaborative efforts between law enforcement agencies. I'll give you an example. There is a marvelous training facility and laboratory in Linthicum, Maryland. The Advanced Defense Forensics Laboratory is situated on a couple of floors above the Defense Computer Defense Computer civilian world as well as the military. And they can't talk to each other. This is not a good thing. What confronts us tomorrow? This is kind of slow. I have to change that. One more. Oh, thank you. That's right.
That's still under warranty.
This thing is 1,000 years old. Well, this slide probably deserves about 2 days, so make yourselves comfortable. One of the people who was a forerunner in the area of intrusion detection is Becky Bates. She worked at NSA and Los Alamos pre-Win-Holy, and has done an awful lot and has worked with some of the top minds in the country on the issue of intrusion detection. Here's the question: with the data coming in, if we don't detect the intrusion, we don't have to have somebody destroy it for it to become useless information. Suppose they just diddle the data, change a few percentages here and there, add up the numbers, readjust the figures, make the totals come out differently, and you're looking at it and they all make sense, and we've got a real problem. Consider part of the infrastructure where that would be a real serious problem. How about if the chemical dump into the water supply is diddled? Consider the pharmaceutical companies that manufacture anything, and then go on the assembly line and then hit the open market. And we don't find out till there's 10, 20, or 30,000 people killed, died from this intrusion. Has it happened? Can it happen? It's anecdotal. And so one of the things that I have struggled with in my career in the FBI is the FBI doesn't want to take action. Law enforcement. I don't pick on the FBI. I love the FBI. Everybody wants proof before we take action. If you wait till there's absolute positive proof, if you don't follow the trend data, if you don't follow the indicators, then it may be too late. In the information age, the decision delayed may be the wrong decision. Yesterday, same decision might have been the right one. Tomorrow, it could be a disaster. So we need to be able to act more quickly than we act now in our decision-making mode. We can't always wait forever for absolute proof positive. Like the water supply. If you wait to make an arrest, as you see Osama creeping towards the water supply with a jar that says danger, poison, if you wait till he dumps it in the water supply, and it may be too late then. You may need to say, wait a minute, Osama, come over here with that bottle. We're not going to let you pour that in the place. So data diddling, I think, is a real danger in a lot of areas. If there isn't good ways to authenticate the accuracy of the information, if the firewalls are not put in place appropriately, then what you end up with may be that. And then comes the issue of trust. People have asked me, well, what about Robert Hansen? Well, at bottom level, it comes down to trust. I mean, you can have skiffs within skiffs within skiffs, but at some point you have to trust the people that you're working with. Sometimes they don't want to trust. It's a classic example. Be fooled a lot. Glad I didn't know the guy. What about next slide? One more. Okay, sorry. The threats aren't necessarily the stereotypical precocious teenager. Yeah, there are a lot of those out there. How many of you have been to DEF CON? There's some people from NPS have been. Oh, it's great. I went for the first time this last year. Well, what a great learning opportunity to talk to some of these people who have more brain power and more time on their hands than they should. Who are not gainfully employed, but looking to find ways to break in. Fascinating culture. In 1991, there was a big debate at the FBI because half of our resources were devoted to foreign counterintelligence and the other half to criminal investigation. After the Berlin Wall, the question was, gee, there's no more evil empire. What do we do with 5,000 FBI agents previously devoted to foreign counterintelligence? Well, there's the answer: economic espionage. Now you've got KGB people who are no longer accountable to a central authority, who are now free agents. And the evidence seems to suggest that they are more dangerous now than they were before, because now they don't have they're not tethered, they're not on a leash. Now they're out trying to sell their wares. So we have and the reference I was making, alluding to before about disgruntled employees, it's a big problem. A big problem in corporate America is very concerned about that. There is an entity across the road over here on the wharf called, the acronym is PERSERAC. It's a Navy activity whose job is to fund research and try to determine what the motivation of people is to do their jobs and hold security clearances and to try to find the moles. That's a major task. Corporate America has almost nothing like that, and they're very vulnerable to get somebody who has access but no authorization to do what they're doing. It becomes a major problem. I think that's a concern to the military as well. Anecdotal information. I was just at Fort Belvoir the other day talking to Army CID people, and some of the hackers they caught were soldiers. Law enforcement has had to deal with people who, not at the same extent of Robert Hansen, but law enforcement officers who have technical skills and then decide that they're going to leave government service for more lucrative ventures, making use of their skills, but leaving a door open via a modem to dial in to access information they have no authorization to get. Well, there's all kinds of problems. A little scarier notion, and again this is anecdotal, but this happened within 3 hours drive of here. An organized crime figure, or that is somebody who was an accountant working for some organized crime figures, was in protective custody under an assumed name, had to go to a hospital. Organized crime found out where he was at. They got a hacker to break in, change the medication in his patient records. It's pretty terrorizing. Go to a hospital, get your appendix out, and you end up in the morgue. The capabilities that are now anecdotal, given the level of the amount of information that's out there and the ability to use it, is going to grow. recalibration that needs to take place in the wake of 9/11. We need to rethink the way we do things. And some of the motivations for why people do what they're doing, they rationalize their behavior, just like conventional criminals. In my time, I interviewed a number of people who were serial killers, serial rapists, who blamed the victim. It was their fault. It wasn't the person who was in jail. It was the victim's fault. They did X, Y, or Z. Criminals rationalize their behaviors. Hackers do also. Hackers love to have free access, but they guard theirs viciously. I don't know if those add up to 8. I think that typically there are 8 components of the critical information infrastructure. But imagine the attacks that could be made that stop the military in its tracks. I mean, for example, if there's a call to duty, everybody report to the ship. But if you're in San Diego, let's say, and people are coming from home, and somebody has decided that they're going to take out the traffic signals and snarl the traffic, how are you going to get to the ship? So civilians' critical infrastructure is something that needs to be factored in. And thinking about, okay, if this collapses, how do we deal with it? There's a popular phrase, and I used to use it all the time, what if? What if? The question no longer is what if, it's when. Matter of time, when. A fellow whom I've worked with over the years, by the name of Marvin Cetron, was hired by DOD several years ago to develop some scenarios about potential terrorist attacks. One of those scenarios was discounted as outrageous in a circular file. It got some attention in the Washington Post about mid-October when the Department of Defense revealed that that was one of Marvin Cetron's scenarios, which was discounted, was crashing a plane into the World Trade Center. Of course, he wasn't the first and the only one to consider such possibilities. Alvin Heidi Toffler, in the book War and Anti-War, which I think is in the library, posed the same kind of suggestion. But we tend to discount these. Let me give you a quote. It's one of my absolute favorite quotes, and I think it'll pay dividends for you if you retain it. How many of you have taken part in brainstorming exercises? You know who created brainstorming? A guy named Alex Osborne. Alex Osborne in the mid-50s wrote a book called Applied Imagination. And one of the phrases in that book, which I think is a profound statement, is it's easier to tame a wild idea than to invigorate a timid one. And we are in conservative occupations. We tend to look conservatively at what we do. It's hard to push the stone up the hill. It's easier to be in the bottom end and slowly let the stone roll down the hill. It's easier to tame a wild idea than to invigorate a timid one. I think that that's something that we need to think about whenever when we hear somebody saying, yeah, but, or if we find ourselves saying that. Wait a minute, let's think about this. Now, the family jewels I'm referring to is intellectual property. A lot of organizations are very concerned, including right up the road, an hour and so away, Silicon Valley. They're very concerned about protecting their intellectual property. How do you do that in the digital age? If you're interested, and want to look, it's not the Harvard Law Review, but nevertheless, it got the attention of some attorneys. I got an article on threat to the internet, threat establishing procedures and protocols that enable us to trust. Ronald Reagan said it. I think it's a useful metric. Trust but verify. And we do that with the military. We're all used to that. We're accustomed to it. And we need to share the way in which we do that without ruffling too many feathers with your civilian counterparts. You get all upset until something happens. In the 70s, nobody thought it was a good idea to have electronic monitors until planes were hijacked. In the wake of 9/11, searches are okay. It reminds me of search so long as they make sure there's no metal knives. Plastic knives are okay, but not metal ones. Now, I don't know if Becky agrees with this. She's done a lot of work with Gene Spafford at Purdue. I kind of like the quote. I think it's a very clever one. The question is that not that encryption is a useless tool, it's how you use it. It's the imaginative way that you make use of encryption. But that should be 97, not 77. It's a typo. In 97, Gene was quoted as talking about what the role of encryption could be, because if you get a technology that's strong and it looks like it does the job, then everybody wants to paint the barn with the same paint. And that isn't always the best solution. There is evidence that Hamas and Al-Qaeda have made use of steganography. They're fairly sophisticated law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officers who said, what's steganography? Tremendous tool. Tremendous tool in the wrong hands, with the wrong motivation, is not a good thing. And there are all of these drug cartels are making use of it. The Cali cartel is making use of it. Organized crime figures. These are all reported in open source publications. Dorothy Denning, who's at Georgetown University, has published a number of articles about the way in which criminals and terrorists have been making use of both encryption and steganography. I think that the experience of the military can be great food to those resources. What is cyber terrorism? Right here, yes, there's an element that specializes in information warfare. Some of that is interpreted as electronic warfare and has maybe a little bit different context. But my contention is, and it hasn't shaken out yet, is that the only difference between information warfare and cyber terrorism is what you do with the tools. The tools are the same. Tools, tactics, techniques are exactly the same. It's in whose hands and for what purpose. Now, some of the use of these tools has proliferated even to some of the stereotypical images. Bubba, white supremacist, racist, who views bumpkins who can't make use of computers. They're making use of technology. They're sharing information. There's no indication that they've made use of steganography encryption yet, except they probably made use of PGP. But they're clearly using the internet. They've got pretty sophisticated websites, and they're sharing information. Corporate America and government entities, the only downside I see to those kinds of discussions, they don't happen often enough, and they don't get enough publicity. They have websites, but exception to those CPAs that work for Henderson. But the standing there is a general acceptance by the public and a kind of trust in the capabilities of people that have that kind of certification. Where are we going with respect to issues that relate to protecting critical information infrastructure? So I think that where we're going is here. And here are the things that could lead you as your particular interest take you. The military already has accreditation and certifications that I'm envious of on behalf of civilian law enforcement. We're not there yet. I did a presentation not too long ago for an organization called the Federal Information Systems Security and Education Association. And I probably couldn't repeat that again, you did it right. I told that there was an interesting parallel, that the kind of information that, or kind of money that was put forth to provide law enforcement people to get their educations is being put forth now for information security, and nobody's tracking it. Nobody knows how that money is being expended, and it would be a shame if we lost that data. The military already does it. The military tracks that kind of data. So the military is a great model. The point I'm trying to make here is that there are a number of ways in which the military can benefit, a number of ways that the civilian law enforcement can benefit from that exchange of information.
Mr. Boyd, another question real quick.
Yes.
Before you leave that slide,
Yes.
do you consider room at institutions such as this for that type of certification, or is it worth getting screening versus education? In the models where education is a 500,000 foot level and training
Did I say
certification?
something?
Can you take
I
that
did a
class?
class, I don't. I thought I'd get a rise out of it. Yes, I think that there is a place for every academic institution, including NPS, to gear programs either specifically to get this kind of certification or to provide the foundation so that one can then go out and take the test to get those kinds of certifications. I think that institutions like this, what I understand about the Naval Postgraduate School and the way the FBI Academy is run are very, very similar. Very similar. And one of the things that I argued throughout my career is that we ought to be doing here, that is at the FBI Academy, something that they're not doing at University ABC, College XYZ, that we ought to be providing the basis for launching people into areas that are important. The basics should be covered somewhere else. Elementary geometry and English lit, great. Teach those out at Stanford and Berkeley and every place else. People who come here should come prepared with those kinds of backgrounds and launch into things that will prepare them to either to receive the certification here or to then go out and get it after they've got the education. I think that institutions like this ought to be preparing people uniquely.
The reason I bring that up is there's always a debate here as to a lot of people frown upon or look down upon any type of certification while you're here as a student because that's not education. And a lot of other people concerned with there's something to be said for grounding education with a combination of real hands-on certification type of situations.
Well, without knowing what political minefields I might be stepping in here, I'll say that this is a very pragmatically oriented institution. It's neither purely academic, it's not purely operational, but designed to serve operational needs, just like the FBI Academy is. And so my inclination now, I guess I could be persuaded otherwise, but I haven't had the discussion to dissuade me that we should be preparing people for that. Certification may not be education, but the foundation for the certification needs to be education. This is where it could be.
So, I'm going to try and paraphrase and understand what you're trying to say here. Are you saying that that certification should never be a replacement for education, but more of just an added certification that you are qualified in this particular field.
Yeah, no, I don't think that it should be either or. I think education should be the basis for certification. I don't think that it's one or the other. Thank you for that. This is an effort by the Department of Justice involving the National Cybercrime Training Partnership. There's a number of different components. They call them portfolios. I'm in the industry and academia. Portfolio looking to get a handle on what the military already has. And I've asked, as far as I know, there's nobody who is a member of the NCTP from the military. And I said, why not? And I think that there's a lot for us to learn, because I think what we're doing is reinventing the wheel. And I think that that's a waste of money. But that's what they're attempting to do this year. That's what our charge is from the Department of Justice. So there's the answer to the question. There's my bias. The key to success is education. I think that not knowing where you came from before you came to NPS, I think that this is one of the finest institutions in the country. I think that you're fortunate to be able to study here. There's few opportunities. I used to tell my students at the academy, you never have an opportunity like this again in your life. Make the best of it. Well, I think that from what I've been told about the selection process of people who come here to study, and what I've heard over the years is that this is an incredible institution that everybody, 0.99 takes full advantage of that opportunity. And I think that's a great legacy that you leave to people who are going to follow behind you. One of the things that we don't do well is evaluation, objective evaluation, looking at ourselves critically. Peter, any business people in here? Peter Drucker, who's a really prominent business guru, the way in which we determine what's important is to throw out our policies and reinvent them. Not take them and modify them, but throw them out altogether and reinvent them. I think that's a very interesting notion. And then the need for, and this is tough because we've got security clearance requirements that prohibit us. What I mentioned several times that local law enforcement throws a lot of rocks at the FBI about not sharing information, and there's some in the FBI who think that's a good thing and that's the way it should stay. There's others who think that what should happen is we should need to find ways to overcome those obstacles so that we can share information, particularly regarding terrorist matters, that we can share that information without violating the rules, or change the rules so that we can get the information that we need to all get the information we need to do the job properly. So I think that those are two hurdles you have to be overcome, and where I put my money and the ability to do that is in educational institutions like this. And out of the educational process will come critical evaluation that will lead to the solution of, or if not the solution, mitigation of the problems of the inability to share information. One of my favorite cartoons, which I couldn't find to show you, there's a comic strip called Croc. And Croc is this guy's in prison, and he's got his head out of the bars, and he's yelling at the guards, and he says, "You can put a lock on my body, but you can't put a lock on my mind." And then the next little clip, it shows him with a tiny little jailer on his head. My contention was that we do that to ourselves. We do that to ourselves by following that which we're familiar with, by repeating consistently over and over what we've done before. Because we're familiar with it, we're accustomed to it, so we just repeat it. And some will even argue that better the devil you know, and therefore you keep on doing that, even if you know that it isn't working as well as it should, you keep on doing the same thing. So I think that we need to stretch our imagination and think wild ideas, tame the wild ideas. Here's a couple of good books. Caleb Carr. This is actually a fairly small book, but one which has got a lot of attention. It's got a lot of really good reviews in the New York Times, Washington Post, the Philadelphia Inquirer, conservative magazines, newspapers, about the fact that part of the lessons of terrorism is that we didn't understand that culture. We still don't understand that culture. We don't understand what makes them tick. We apply our own experiential base to their mindset, and that doesn't work. And it's never going to work. So we need to reconceptualize the way in which we deal with our enemy. There's some great books that I thought might be of interest to you. Bill Bonney is Director of Information Security for Motorola. His partner is Jerry Koviak, who's now retired, writing, sitting on his deck chair in Whidbey Island, Washington. Fairly good books. Here's some e-resources. HTCIA is an international organization. ONNET, that's Fred Cohen's site. He's just up in Sandia Labs in Livermore. He's got a cyber defender program there that pales by comparison to this one, but he's making his efforts there. Fred, how many know who Fred is? Fred's the guy that invented computer virus for his doctoral dissertation in 1986 at the University of Southern California, and has been staving off gunslingers ever since. Fastest gun in the West, and all of them want to attack his site and overcome the great Cohen. Here's some great hacker sites. I think attrition.com is a really good one. They do a really good job of critically assessing published material and saying what you said this and what about that. Those are all pretty good sites. 2600, whether you take them seriously or not, there's good intel at those at some of these sites. The Cult of the Dead Cow is one that Randy turned me on to about 6 years ago. This is the effort that my company is making. We've not recast ourselves, but have a new division of Homeland Security. So if you want to take a look at the website, what it is that this part of corporate America is doing, and I would venture to say that if you look at this and compare it with IBM or Microsoft or almost anywhere else, that they look pretty similar. And I'll tell you that what they're all doing is looking and casting about to figure out what they should be doing, how should they be doing, how do they interact. Because in corporate America, maybe the better example, if government doesn't play well together, corporate America plays less well in the sandbox together. They want to own the whole sandbox. They don't want anybody to play with it. They want to own it. So, how many Navy people again? How many Marines? Navy Marines? Okay. So I'm open to questions, but Reuters reported that the coal has been repaired. It's ready to go. I want to, Todd Beamer's famous quote, United 93, crashed in Cincinnati. Coal is ready to go. I'm sure the crew of the coal is ready to go. I'm sure that those of us who think we've been done dirty are ready to go. And however much longer you're going to be here before you go back to operational settings, I think that the lessons of this afternoon, Shirley says, question your assumptions, don't be afraid to think outside the box. Easier to take a wild idea than too big a team. And I wish you all well. I salute you for your contributions to the defense of the nation. Thank you. Questions?
Most people who need to leave can leave or go to have a few questions. Or come on in.
Do you see, Captain Jeff Klein, do you see any initiative anywhere to help local law enforcement or county officials to evaluate their own vulnerability and critical information? So they can see where they think they have a problem, seek answers, try to reinforce and protect those areas?
There is an organization called the Major City Chiefs. It is not a formal group, but they've been around a long time. They emerged out of something called the Executive Development Institute, the FBI Academy, Major City Chiefs of Police, and they formed this group. And they've been looking at those kinds of issues. I don't know if they've gone beyond rhetoric. I don't know if they've gone beyond that. My guess is they have. I think that what's lacking, I mean, there's goodwill, there's good intentions, but what they lack is an infrastructure to support it. There needs to be a place to house that kind of initiative. The Department of Justice may be the place to fund something like that, but so far that hasn't happened to my knowledge. Just the Department is looking, but they're not doing anything.
What is the, I'm looking for a current trend. I'd like to ask for your philosophic view on this, but as I see it, the government has two potential roles in protecting the infrastructure. One would be advisory and the other would be regulatory. What do you see the current trend?
I think it continues. The evidence I see is a continuation on both tracks. Both want to be advisors and they want to regulate as well.
I personally think that that's a mistake going in both directions. I think that it's a cross purposes.
I think you're right. I was in a meeting several years ago, and Benjamin Ward, who was then the Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, was at this meeting. It was sponsored by DEA. And there was a couple of days of brainstorming potential for civil unrest. It's a part of what emerged out of this study that I did in '86. And so these people all gathered together and were discussing. And there was a young man who was probably fresh in government service and doing his oaths, who was trying to control the conversation, and made a remark something like, well, just tell us what you need and we'll evaluate that request. And Ben Ward said, young man, this is the best thing the federal government can do, is give us the money we need and get the hell out of our way. We never saw that young guy again because today they were scared away. Ben was quite an imposing figure. The problem is that we have, feds have the money, the state and locals don't. And Simon Garfinkel, who's one of the prominent people in information security, has written an article commenting about threats to terrorism, and what his contention is that we can't pass more laws and we can't put more cops on the street. What we need to do is think more imaginatively about, so you see why I'm biased, I like this article. He says we've got to deny terrorist access. We can't simply put more cops on the street. He gives an example of bank robberies. He says banks are going to continue to be robbed. They're going to continue to be robbed until we stop putting paper money in banks. If banks become financial transmitter of financial information and use smart cards, there won't be any more bank robberies. Now, there'll be a huge increase in fraud, but there won't be any more bank robberies. So his point, I think, is a very good one, and that is that if you deny, if you use technology to deny access, then you're going to thwart some of the, you take away the mechanism. If you, for example, one of the illustrations he uses, he says you can't, he says right now if you load a plane full of